Welcome to the Alaska Weather Show. I'm meteorologist Peter Chan, coming to you from the National Weather Service. And boy, there's a lot of interesting things to talk about weather-wise, especially this heat wave that's going to grip portions of the Pacific Northwest. This is a record-shattering heat wave. Some of the highest temperatures may have ever been recorded in a number of places, let alone the duration, and that does have an impact on Alaska weather. We'll get into that in a second, but if you would like additional information, you can always go online at weather.gov/Alaska. Tons of information to look at there. And for a recorded phone line forecast, 1-800-472-0391. Well, we'll talk about our fire danger, and it remains high to extreme across areas of the East Central, particularly around north and east of Fairbanks, including the Yukon Flats and 40-mile Goldfield region, also along and just north of the Alaska Range. And southern parts of the state, though, have seen things at least settle down, as have areas along the central and western Brooks Range, because they've had more substantial rainfall there the past couple of days. And also it's been cloudy and wet with showers along much of the southwest, and especially coastal areas of the Alaska Peninsula, including the Kenai on over toward Prince William Sound. So we'll keep that in mind, at least though conditions across southern parts of the state have improved in terms of fire danger, but still high to extreme there around and especially northeast of Fairbanks. Looking at the satellite imagery, we continue to see this plume of moisture, what we call an atmospheric river. Now, not in the classic sense of what we get in the fall or early winter months that feed some of these powerful low pressure systems, but nevertheless, we see that flow of moisture coming in from the south. You see that band of clouds running up and down there through the heart of the Gulf of Alaska up into south central areas. That's going to provide another round of rain tonight and tomorrow, say from Yakutat westward to Prince William Sound. Meanwhile, notice the clearer skies over British Columbia there, just to the south of Ketchikan, including Vancouver Island. That's that massive high pressure system that's going to produce the record heat wave across the Pacific Northwest. Further, though, out to our west, looking there in the southeast Bering Sea, just on the Bering side of the Alaska Peninsula and the eastern Aleutians, is an area of low pressure. You can see that counterclockwise spin in the clouds. That low pressure system, it's just kind of sitting there because it can't go anywhere. With that big high pressure over the Pacific Northwest, that's a very dominant feature. And so it leaves us stuck in a pattern. Unfortunately, it looks like we're going to hold now through maybe the beginning of July. That's what some of the current extended temperature outlook and precipitation outlook is forecasting. So that means much of southwest, south central Alaska will stay cooler and occasionally wetter. And we'll watch that low pressure system gradually weaken, at least the one that's out there now, but as you can imagine, there'll likely be another one replace it here in time here over the upcoming week. But we got to get through the weekend, and at least it looks like we'll get a little break in the action, especially later this weekend in south central areas, as that plume of moisture coming on off the Gulf of Alaska will let up a bit. And as a result, at least a little drier conditions. The interior will continue to see a chance of some scattered showers and isolated storms, though not terribly widespread. It's that time of year, and it'll continue especially along and north of the Alaska Range up into portions of east central Alaska. So here's the weather map. Today we continue to see a couple areas of low pressure there across the northern half of the state, some troughs with some isolated thunderstorms either side of that along the east central areas into northwest Canada. You see that ridge of high pressure nudging up now into the southern panhandle, and that feature will become more dominant here as we head through the weekend, bringing the warmer temperatures, potentially some record heat for the southern panhandle, including Ketchikan. But to the west, there's that low pressure that's going to just kind of sit and spin and gradually fill and weaken over the eastern Bering, but it's still keeping a southerly flow across the Alaska Peninsula up into the southwest portion of the state, which is going to cause a continuation of episodes of some rain, especially on the windward side of the mountains there, the coastal mountains. Otherwise, the front up there along the Arctic coast just kind of washes out and weakens, and that will allow for at least a few areas of fog and perhaps a little bit of mix of precipitation there out along the Arctic Ocean. But here on Saturday, we'll see a low pressure trough extending across the northern portion of the state with a thermal low there around Fort Yukon and the Eagle Village areas, where we could see isolated thunderstorms redevelop with the daytime heating. Farther south still, south central areas along the northern Gulf Coast will see some areas of rain as a result of that plume of moisture riding northward. And then also still moisture coming up there across Kodiak Island, the Alaska Peninsula, and much of the southwest will keep either areas of rain or scattered showers going. As that ridge of high pressure, though, will try to take a little better hold here as we go through the weekend. There is another low way back out toward the western Aleutians on Sunday that will try to work its way eastward slowly, not making a lot of progress, but very well could just take place of the one that's currently over the southeast Bering. With that weak area of high pressure in place, the more dominant high, the one that's going to bring record-shattering heat to the Pacific Northwest, that's going to remain down toward the lower 48 and up through British Columbia, southern Alberta. So here are temperatures. Low temperatures for Saturday morning will generally be in the 50s across the southeast, maybe even near 60, rather warm there at Ketchikan. Otherwise, upper 40s to around 50 across much of south central areas. And then temperature Saturday afternoon, still with some cloud cover, scattered showers around generally in the 50s along the coast. Lower mid-50s as you get up inland, 66 maybe at Talkeetna. But look at Ketchikan up to 78, and that may be a little conservative. Certainly could hit 80 tomorrow on Saturday. Better chance of that Sunday, I'll show you in a second. But otherwise, lows will generally be in the 50s, though near 60 at Ketchikan in the southeast. As we go up along south central areas, lows generally again upper 40s to around 50 degrees. Little bit improvement in the warmth across south central areas, 67 at Glen Allen, 65 at Talkeetna, but 80 at least, maybe even a few degrees warmer than that at Ketchikan, which could be in record territory. And then across the Arctic coast, lows will generally be down near just above freezing. Otherwise, 40s to lower 50s along the Yukon River. And high temperature Saturday afternoon will be in the 40s to lower 50s along the immediate Arctic coast, as well as along the west end of the Seward Peninsula, but otherwise 60s and 70s along the Yukon River Valley, 78 there Saturday afternoon at Fort Yukon. And Sunday morning lows will be upper 30s to lower mid-40s along the Arctic coast, upper 40s to lower 50s the Yukon River Valley, 40s out toward the west and through the Seward Peninsula, and temperatures Sunday should reach at least about 77 at Fort Yukon, 72 at Fairbanks, 54 over at Nome. And then going through the southwest sections and the Aleutians, temperatures Saturday morning will be generally in the upper 40s throughout the southwest and extending down along the Aleutian chain a little cooler, lower to mid 40s for lows. And then high temperatures Saturday afternoon should get up into the upper 50s to lower 60s as we go up the Kuskokwim and Yukon River valleys. And then along the Alaska Peninsula, high temperatures will generally be in the lower to mid 50s and only around 50 out through the Aleutian chain. And then Sunday morning, lows across the air fairly uniform with still cloud cover around, some scattered showers. Temperatures will generally be in the mid 40s for lows, and then high temperatures Sunday afternoon. We'll have to struggle to get much above 60 through the interior of the southwest, and then again generally in the 50s across the Alaska Peninsula, and in the upper 40s to near 50 the Aleutian chain. But this is what I want to show you and talk about. Look at the temperature outlook. This is going in now into early July, July 1st through the 5th, and you can see down in the lower right of your screen just that dark brick red over the Pacific Northwest, including Washington State, Oregon, Idaho. Those areas are going to see triple-digit record-setting heat. Some of it could be all-time record highs above 110 degrees in some of the lower valleys of southeast Washington State and northern Oregon. So stay tuned, listen to other reports about that. To the west, that leaves us in cooler temperatures across south central and much of the southwest, so it's going to trend cooler for as we head toward the 4th of July here in Alaska, except for maybe the southeast panhandle, seeing temperatures a bit above normal, but not nearly as hot as the Pacific Northwest. And as a result, we have big high pressure over the Pacific Northwest, low pressure out over the southeast Bering. That pumps moisture up into Alaska, so we will likely see above normal precipitation again across the western half of the state, especially the southwest and Alaska Peninsula, with a tendency for near to below normal precipitation across the southeast panhandle.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Well, it's time now for your aviation weather segment, and for planning purposes, if you are planning a flight over the weekend, Saturday into Sunday, there are two main weather features. An enormous area of high pressure is going to produce record heat, perhaps all-time record heat over portions of British Columbia down into the lower 48 Pacific Northwest, Washington State, Oregon. Could see some temperatures above 110 degrees for all-time records. Meanwhile, in the west, we continue to watch an area of low pressure that's going to slowly weaken over the southeastern portion of the Bering Sea off of the southwest coast. That is going to keep a moisture flow coming up into the southern coastal areas of the state from the northern Gulf of Alaska, especially the Chugach Mountains on into the St. Elias Mountains. We'll continue to see precipitation fall there Friday night through Saturday. Along the Arctic coast, a weak frontal boundary isn't going to make much progress south, with colder air north out over the Arctic Ocean, and then extensive IFR conditions back through the Bering and the Aleutians. Friday afternoon, we'll see VFR conditions across much of the interior, with some building cumulus clouds and isolated thunderstorms along the Yukon River, and especially just northeast of the Yukon Flats and around the 40-mile Goldfield area. And then IFR conditions over much of the Bering and the Aleutians continuing. And as we go into Sunday morning, VFR conditions will prevail across much of the interior, especially north of the Alaska Range through the Yukon River Valley and the North Slope. But we will continue to see IFR conditions hold there around Prince William Sound toward Yakutat, and then also along the southwest coast, the YK deltas, and out into the eastern Aleutians and much of the Bering. Isolated storms could redevelop Sunday afternoon, a few on the east end of Norton Sound. Also, again, up around just northeast of the Yukon Flats and down toward the 40-mile Goldfield. So the past conditions on Saturday, Anaktuvik should remain VFR, but there could be some cumulus buildups and isolated storms as you go south and east of the south entrance. And then same thing for Atigun. There could be some cumulus buildups and isolated storms as you fly further south and east during the afternoon and evening hours. As we go down to Lake Clark and Merrill, look for IFR conditions in the early morning, improving to VFR late morning and afternoon. That'll be the case also at Rainy Pass. And as we go further east, we're looking at Windy Pass to be MVFR becoming VFR. And then Isabel will also see MVFR conditions in the early morning becoming VFR. And Mentasta should generally hold on to VFR conditions throughout the day on Saturday. A little further south and west, Tanita, MVFR becoming VFR as well. And over at Portage, IFR conditions will tend to hold on the east end, especially out over Prince William Sound. But as you go over toward the west entrance, generally MVFR conditions should prevail on Saturday. And for the southeast panhandle, the north end, Chilkoot and White Passes should see IFR conditions in the early morning, improving to VFR conditions as we head through the day. Freezing levels Saturday morning will generally be below 6,000 feet over the southwest, Kodiak Island, and the Alaska Peninsula, but rise dramatically over the southeast panhandle and be upwards over 14 and 16,000 feet toward the south end, where Ketchikan could see some record highs in the 80s here over the weekend, especially by Sunday. And then taking a look at where the best icing potential will be, we continue to see southerly flow of moisture off of the Gulf that will influence the area around Prince William Sound, the east end there of the Chugach Mountains into the St. Elias Mountains above 10,000 feet. Also over the southwest and into the Alaska Peninsula, icing potential exists above 8,000 feet. And then pockets there in the Yukon Valley above 12,000 feet, with some of the convection that could fire up in east central areas during the afternoon and evening. Upper level jet stream winds, impressive 120 knot jet core coming in there across the eastern portion of the state, with a massive heat ridge over British Columbia into the Pacific Northwest down there across the lower 48. Back to the west, low pressure there near Nunivak Island will continue to weaken over the weekend and pull back toward the west as we come down to lower levels of the atmosphere. 50-knot winds onshore around Yakutat from the southwest Saturday. South-southwest flow there over the southwest portion of the state, 30 to 40 knots. And as we come down to 3,000 feet, that high remains anchored over southern British Columbia with low pressure out there just west of Nunivak Island, 35 to 45 knot winds over the southwest with the potential for a little low-level wind shear and turbulence generally between the surface and 4,000 feet.
Why is plastic marine debris so common? We know there's trash in the ocean. Unfortunately, a lot of it is plastic. We find plastic everywhere, from the ocean floor to surface. The plastics are all shapes and sizes and all different types. We find plastics on beaches, and also inside animals' stomachs or wrapped around their bodies. That's bad news for our ocean and the animals that live in it and near it. It's also bad news for us. A recent study from the University of Georgia estimated that 8 million metric tons of plastic trash enters the ocean every year. That's like putting 5 bags filled with plastic on every foot of coastline in the world. That's a lot of plastic in the ocean, and it's there because, well, we put it there. The 5 most common items found during the International Coastal Cleanup are plastic cigarette butts, food wrappers, plastic beverage bottles, plastic bottle caps, and plastic straws and drink stirrers. Notice anything in common with those? It's a lot of single-use, disposable plastic. It goes without saying, we produce too much waste. That waste ends up in the ocean when we litter or don't recycle. Plastic is an important part of our modern lives. We use it for a lot of good things. But we need to take responsibility for how much we use every day and where it goes when we're done with it. The 3 R's can help, and it's up to every single one of us to practice them. Reduce your use of disposable plastic. That's anything you use once and throw away. Just use less. Reuse disposable plastics when possible. A plastic bottle makes a great coin piggy bank or watering can. The possibilities are endless. Recycle anything that can be recycled so it stays out of landfills, where trash can blow away. Ocean plastic is a huge problem that's only going to get worse. Unless we change our ways, we can do better for the ocean and for us. Why is plastic marine debris so common? We know there's trash in the ocean. Unfortunately, a lot of it is plastic. We find plastic everywhere, from the ocean floor to surface. The plastics are all shapes and sizes and all different types. We find plastics on beaches, and also inside animals' stomachs or wrapped around their bodies. That's bad news for our ocean and the animals that live in it and near it. It's also bad news for us. A recent study from the University of Georgia estimated that 8 million metric tons of plastic trash enters the ocean every year. That's like putting 5 bags filled with plastic on every foot of coastline in the world. That's a lot of plastic in the ocean, and it's there because, well, we put it there. The 5 most common items found during the International Coastal Cleanup are plastic cigarette butts, food wrappers, plastic beverage bottles, plastic bottle caps, and plastic straws and drink stirrers. Notice anything in common with those? It's a lot of single-use, disposable plastic. It goes without saying, we produce too much waste. That waste ends up in the ocean when we litter or don't recycle. Plastic is an important part of our modern lives. We use it for a lot of good things. But we need to take responsibility for how much we use every day and where it goes when we're done with it. The 3 R's can help, and it's up to every single one of us to practice them. Reduce your use of disposable plastic. That's anything you use once and throw away. Just use less. Reuse disposable plastics when possible. A plastic bottle makes a great coin piggy bank or watering can. The possibilities are endless. Recycle anything that can be recycled so it stays out of landfills, where trash can blow away. Ocean plastic is a huge problem that's only going to get worse. Unless we change our ways, we can do better for the ocean and for us.
What is the Great Pacific Garbage Patch? Well, first, let's talk about what it's not. It's not a floating island of trash like a garbage dump or a landfill. It's also not the only patch. They exist all throughout the ocean, and the Pacific Garbage Patch just happens to be the most famous. Garbage patches are large areas of marine debris concentration that are formed by rotating ocean currents called gyres, kind of like big whirlpools that suck things in. A garbage patch is made up of tiny plastic pieces called microplastics that are less than 5 millimeters long. It's more like pepper flakes swirling in a soup than something you can skim off the surface. You might come across some larger items like plastic bottles, but it's possible to sail through a garbage patch and not see anything. And they're a big problem for the ocean and us. People often ask why we can't just scoop up all the marine debris in the ocean. And the answer is, unfortunately, it's just not that simple. The first challenge is the sheer size of these garbage patches. They're huge. They're constantly moving with ocean currents. And there's debris from the ocean surface all the way down to the sea floor. Not to mention all the marine life we would disrupt if we tried to just scoop up debris. So what can we do? Well, the ultimate solution is prevention. And we need to keep that as our highest priority. We can reduce, reuse, and recycle to keep trash out of the ocean in the first place. And we can participate in things like shoreline cleanups. It's a lot easier to deal with debris before it gets to the ocean. Because until we stop marine debris at the source, we'll just be cleaning it up forever.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. Well, we covered things by land, by air, now by sea. Your marine forecast, starting out with today's sea ice edge. We see that there is a lot of open water now across the Chukchi Sea, and essentially most of the Bering is open with just a few little patches of ice left here or there up in the north end near the strait, and in through parts of Kotzebue Sound. And as we extend up along the Arctic coast, it's also breaking up as well. And now that we're past the solstice, we'll continue to see this trend here as we go through the short summertime. Well, Saturday's marine forecast across the southeast, winds are in the inner waterways will be out of the north-northwest, Petersburg down to Ketchikan, 15 to 20 knots, waves 4 feet, but southerly 15 knots, 3-footers there. Juneau on up toward Skagway there, Lynn Canal. And then along the coast, Gulf side, we are looking at northwest winds 10 to 20 knots, 7 to 8 foot swells, but 15 to 20 knots from the south, Sitka on up toward Yakutat. And on Sunday, look for winds in the inner waterways to be northwesterly, 15 knots, 3-footers there from Petersburg down through Ketchikan, and northwest to 20 knots, 7 to 8 foot swells along the Gulf Coast. And then up further north, winds will be northwest at 10 to 15 knots from Gustavus to Yakutat westward, and swells 5 to 6 feet. Across south central areas, out over the Gulf, winds will generally be out of the east, around 15 to 20 knots off the Kenai and Kodiak with 7-foot swells. But as we get on in toward the interior of Cook Inlet, there could be some winds up to 30 knots, 9-footers at the mouth of Cook Inlet, but otherwise northeasterly winds around 10 knots the remainder of Cook Inlet and Prince William Sound with waves only a couple of feet. Sunday, winds will be generally have a westerly component across the northern portion of the region with winds only around 10 knots. Waves 5 feet off the Kenai, 2 feet in Cook Inlet and Prince William Sound. The winds may still be a bit southeasterly there, just north of Kodiak Island into the mouth of Cook Inlet. And we can see winds still southeasterly on the Pacific side off the Alaska Peninsula and Kodiak Island with swells of 8 to 9 feet. On the Bering side, winds will be out of the southeast to south, 15 to 25 knots, and waves 3 to 5 feet. Sunday, winds will generally turn more out of the southeast on the Pacific side at around 10 knots, swell 6 feet, and winds generally out of the east or south there along the Alaska Peninsula and the Bering side, and waves 2 to 3 feet. Across the Aleutians, winds on Saturday will be predominantly out of the west across the eastern Aleutians, upwards to 20 knots, swells 7 to 8 feet on the Pacific side, 4 to 6 feet on the Bering side. Further west of Adak, we're looking at southwest winds 20 to 25 knots, 7 to 9 foot swells, Kiska to Shemya. And then on Sunday, overall winds are going to turn more toward the south across the entire Aleutian chain, 10 to 15 knots the east end with waves 3 to 5 feet, but then the western half winds a bit stronger, 20 to 25 knots, and swells of 8 feet. As we look at the southwest and west coast, you'll notice the circulation, the counterclockwise turn of the winds. Low is centered southwest of Nunavik Island, and generally the flow is offshore up there through the west central mainland and Norton Sound at 15 knots, waves 3 to 4 feet there and around 4 to 5 feet. St. Paul, St. George, and St. Matthew. Sunday, winds will turn more southerly along the coast, 10 to 15 knots, waves only running a few feet, but northwesterly at south of St. Matthew down towards St. Paul and St. George with waves also just a few feet. The Arctic coast will see winds out of the east-southeast, 15 knots still with ice, though it is breaking up. And then along the western coast, winds will be offshore out of Kotzebue Sound and off of the Seward Peninsula, 10 to 15 knots. Southerly, though, north of Point Hope, and waves generally running just a few feet. Sunday, winds will pick up a bit, especially there, the northwest tip, Port Hope, on up toward Wainwright, 25 to 30 knot winds, and waves around 7 feet, with ice areas along the Arctic coast and winds out of the west at 10 to 15 knots. Quick check of the surface map shows that area of low pressure weakening just off to the west-southwest of Nunavik Island on Saturday. We continue to see a southerly flow of moisture up into south-central Alaska. That will begin to wind down as we head through the weekend. By Sunday, high pressure ridge will be in place over the Gulf of Alaska, which should allow for at least the showers to diminish, be lighter, and more scattered. And no really strong winds across the region except for that front approaching the northwest Arctic coast on Sunday. Have a great weekend. Thank you for watching us, and be sure to join us tomorrow night.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.